Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm just trying to get my technology going this morning. There we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the 10-minute trades trade room in 2 more seconds. Monday is always a little bit slower. Okay. Welcome to the 10-minute trades trade room. My name is Lee Goldstein. I'm the trading director. And please remember that all the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. It is possible to lose money trading futures. So don't trade money that you cannot afford to lose. All right. My throat is already in trouble and the week hasn't even started. All right. So we've got actually 2 reports we're looking at. One that we're trading, that I'm trading. We're not looking at family money trades this morning. ISM used to be what we used to call a prime trade. It went through a very, very good period of trading for quite a few years. And then it got very challenged after the world crisis began, which is true of quite a few reports. A lot of reports changed when the crisis began. Some have come back. Some have partially come back to behaving the way they used to behave before everything took place that we're going through now. And then some of them never came back and still are reports that we just watch carefully. So there's 2 things going on this morning. There's a small little report called manufacturing PMI. And the market looks at it a little bit. The market doesn't look at it in a monstrous fashion. But years ago, it was a report that we used to think that we wanted to trade. Right now, it's been inconsistent, so we don't have a perfect setup for it. So I'm just going to, but I have an NQ setup that we tested last month, and it didn't look bad. This is not my favorite time of the day to trade the NQ on a news report. It's also not my favorite time of day to trade a news report because it's so close to the market open. So you're often dealing with volatility that's not necessarily related to the news. And you can see the markets are just opening, they're quite volatile. So it makes the probabilities of a smallish news trade to work well, it makes it harder. So a 10 o'clock trade is definitely going to give you a better opportunity. However, all that being said, I have a testing setup. And when I say testing setup on this report, this is not even close to a report that I would currently trade with my money. So, I mean, this is really a test. And it's a test to see if our setup is worth trying. So it's not something that, I know there's people, I know you, I know our members, I know that some of you will trade my tests. So I just want to say 8 times that this is a test that is untested. Sometimes, we have tests that are tested. This is not a test that is very well tested. So, trade at your own risk. Using a bracket of 10 on the NQ, which is a little bit small. And then I'm using a target of 7, or in fact, I'm going 6 and 14. And I'm going to use a stop of 17, and that's a little bit small, especially this time of day for the NQ. And then my entry time is 9:44:59. Okay. Again, I'll say it again, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. This is a test of a test. It's not a report that we have multiple tests that look great. So you're absolutely trading at your own risk. Okay. We're always trading at our own risk, but sometimes the risk feels less because we've done so much testing. Okay. You all know what I mean. Regular members know exactly what I mean. So this report is called Final Manufacturing, PMI, and the market keeps an eye on it. The market does look at it. And that's why you can get a movement from it. Manufacturing data is important. The market loves looking at manufacturing data. Now you can see the volatility of the NQ. Just a couple of minutes ago, it was only down 2 or 3 points. Okay? So that does make this type of a trade more difficult. It definitely makes it more difficult. Now I'm just going to open my settings one more time because I just started recording. So final manufacturing on the NQ, I'm using a bracket of 10, targets of 6 and 14, a stop of 17, and an activation entry time of 9:44:59. Last month, we did get some behavior that seemed to work on the NQ on this report. So it's possible it could work again. If it does, then we might get more interested in thinking about trading it. And I'm just going to, last month, my brackets didn't look good on the chart. It was hard to tell what was going on. That's exactly what happened last month. So when you have a lot of volatility in price, you have a tendency not to spread your charts enough so that your brackets are sitting on top of each other. I don't want my brackets on top of each other. In other words, I want them to look more like that. See, I want space between them so I can analyze the trade when we're done. So that's all I was checking. I made my time 0 so that the strategy would trigger. If the strategy thinks time has already passed, it'll act like the trade is just beginning. Okay? So you can always test your brackets by setting your time to 0. Just make sure you're not live when you do that, or you could wind up getting pulled into a trade. Now the market is quite volatile. It's only 5 minutes away from our setup. So you want to be careful. Now on the other chart, the left-hand chart, let's do one more thing. Check our time sync. Bear with me. There's a lot of news, because a lot of the world leaders are gathering together. The G20 just ended. So there could be a fair amount of news that affects the markets during reports. So you want to keep all that in mind. This is a kind of a busy week for news. You've got the FOMC statement, which of course is a very meaningful report. Everybody's watching for the FOMC. So I'm checking my time sync by going to the website time.is, and my sync is good. All right, my time is in sync. So that's one way that we check our time sync. We go to the website time.is. Not time.is.com, but time.is. One more time. So I'm checking my time sync, and it puts my computer in sync. Because we're trading around a specific time of entry. And that's why it's important to us to have our time in sync. It's vital to us to have our time in sync, okay? So we're only 2 minutes away, roughly 2.5, from this news coming out. And we're looking to see if there's a response. And I could set up a very quick gold trade, also 7 bracket, target of 4, target of 9, entry of 9, 944, 59s. All I'm doing is I'm setting up a second test. Might as well test gold. We're here watching. Now, you know, if you've got multiple strategies running at the same time, which you can do with NinjaTrader 8, that's why I like to label my strategies. And check my bracket. 7 is good. Apply it, okay it, and we just got it in under the bell. Might as well do a gold test. Can't hurt, because gold has moved on this report in the past. So now we've got 2 tests going. On the left, we've got gold. On the right, we've got the NQ. We're not going to analyze the report by watching the video, because we have the reason we're here is the ISM manufacturing report. That's the main reason we're here. So that's what we're going to set up for right after this takes place. So whether it wins or loses is not going to cost us or make us anything. It's just information for the next time. And that's a very important part of trading. I don't have to stress that. Sometimes you might spend the whole trade room just trying to gather information for the next time. And we do that often. And other times we trade live real money. So it always depends on what event is taking place, what its recent history has been. That's what determines whether or not we're interested in risking live money. It's really simple. It's just, how is it traded previously? Is it consistent? 5 seconds. So the NQ, very quick response. Gold, not a big response. The news is out. It's not showing up. It's slightly negative, creating a little bit of a push with gold to the upside, but not dramatic. And I'm trying to see if the news will show up on investing.com, and it's not. So gold trying to hit the first target, NQ completely reversed. It did a quick news trade, and then you see you have a gold fill. So you would have been able to protect a profit. So this is data that you look at. We'll use this when we look at the video. We can't speed things up, but I don't want to spend a lot of time managing a trade. So let's see if we can hit our slightly smaller target. Okay, so we'll keep this data for the video. After the next trade, we could analyze it, and let me set up for the next trade. So that was final manufacturing, which looks like we know the potential is there for it to be a tradable report. The question with final manufacturing is whether it's a consistent tradable report. That's the issue. It's not whether it can work or not work. We know it can work. Just because we've been here long enough working on it. Okay, so I'm going to reset my account. Those were tests. Just reset it to 0, as if we just got here. And now I'm leaving my chart on gold on the left. I'm going to put my chart on ES on the right. Well, you know what? I'm going to put my chart MGC, micro gold, on the right side. And let me talk about ISM manufacturing. ISM manufacturing, like I said, has been a report that we traded for many years, and it was one of the major trades that we traded and liked, and we made money on it. It was considered a prime trade, and what that means is it was a very reliable, profitable trade over a long period of time. And then the world crisis came and the ISM reports became very difficult to trade. Now, it's nobody's fault. The markets changed. And it is what it is. Now, I'll tell you this right now, Denise, that oil is not an index that normally is tradable on manufacturing news. So my guess, probably a random move on oil. The fact that it moved once on an ISM report is anecdotal. In other words, what you're telling me is anecdotal. Now you need to go back and look at the last 4 oil movements on the final manufacturing report and see if there's a consistent move over 3 or 4 months. Then you have a real oil response. So that's how I take the information you gave me. I thank you. It's great information. But then you got to go back and add your testing to make it make sense. Okay. It used, in the old days when we were here years and years ago, believe it or not, the only index we traded on every report was oil. So I believe that it's possible that oil can move on a manufacturing report. I'm just saying, okay, now we got to go back and test it. So it's an interesting thought. I personally don't think it'll be tradable in the long run going forward on these types of reports. So ISM manufacturing, we've got 2 ways that we've traded it. We've traded it as a trap trade, and we've traded it as a breakout trade. I'm trading it today as a breakout trade. I'm going to trade it live, and I'm going to use 2 contracts. It's a report that seems to be trading better recently as a breakout trade. I'm going to use a slightly smaller target because I'm using a slightly bigger bracket. I'm going with a bracket of 7 instead of 6, and I'm going to use targets of 7 and 15. I like the targets, and the stop is 10, and the entry time I'm going to use is 9:59:59. Let me record this. Now, is this a guarantee? No, this is not a family money trade. I'm not sure it's ready to become a family money trade. I'd love it if it did come back and be a family money trade. ISM manufacturing is a little bit stronger than the non-manufacturing version of this report. It usually, in its history, it was more volatile. It had better movement. So we have a bracket of 7, a target of 7, a target of 15, and an entry time of 9:44:59. That's my morning setup. And I'm labeling it. And it's ISM, manufacturing, trading it with gold trading this one live. So I'll put my account on real, apply it and okay it, and then you make sure your charts are the same as the way you're trading. Let me check my time tests. Thank you. 9:59:59 should be, yep, thank you, Tess. Thank you, room members. My time, I forgot to change the 44. 9:59:59 is my activation entry time. That's when our orders will trigger on the chart. So not for 7 minutes and 34 seconds. 9:59:59. And if I would have triggered that, if I would have enabled that, yes, Stephen, if I would have enabled that, it would have triggered my trade. So you have to be careful about the way you set up your trades. Always double check before you hit that enable button, because when you hit that enable button, that's when your trade is ready to go. Now, what I thought I would do on the right chart is do a test of the trap trade, because the trap trade, we have a setup on this report that doesn't look bad. And the trap trade setup has an entry time of 10 o'clock. And I'm only testing this on micro gold, okay? Testing it on micro gold because I don't really care for the way micro gold trades live. It does not have good liquidity or volume. I wish they would make a new gold micro like they've done with oil and the mini and S&P. So, because the micro gold is not, in my opinion, a true micro, I mean, like the new micros. The new micros are great. So I'm going to use a stop of 20. My orders, my tiers are going to be 8. And let me just check my setup. 8 and 18, I believe, is what we're going to use. Yep. And that's like a bracket, but it's different. The idea of a trap trade, and I just want to check your bracket center is price at the time. Your stop loss position is last fill price. Some people have a different version of the trap trade. I'm going to enter the trap trade 5 seconds before 10 o'clock. My orders are going to show up on the chart. And again, I'm just testing the trap trade. I don't really have enough room on my charts to do it the way that I'd like to do it. I'm hoping that we'll see the news show up this morning. Denise, we don't even think about that whether the banks pay and get these reports early. The markets, if the markets move on an event, what do we care, right? We don't care. And I would like to know how you know that that's true also. Where are you getting that info? I mean, there are some reports where people and institutions do get the reports early, but there's no, I've never seen anywhere that the banks are getting this report early, in all honesty. There are some reports we know they're getting early. So whether that is true or not, I would not necessarily, I would like to know where you're getting that info from is what I'm saying. Anyway, let's check our time sync. Time sync. By going to the website time.is. My time is exact. So what I'm looking for is a burst of price in one direction that follows through. Okay, on the right side, we're looking for a pop or a drop and then a change in direction, because the trap trade is a reversal. It's a trade where you're putting your orders above and below the current price, but you're expecting a reversal, okay? So on our left side, the report, the way that we're trading live is we're looking for the regular breakout or breakdown based on the ISM manufacturing news. My gut feeling, and it means nothing how I feel about what the result is going to be, doesn't mean anything. My feeling is that manufacturing is up. I think manufacturing is up, not down. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you want to come into the room this week, freetraderoom.com, freetraderoom.com. And you could give us a like or two on YouTube, would be greatly appreciated. So 2 different types of trading, the same event. On the right side, it's something called the trap, and I'll explain it after the trade. And on the left side, we have our standard breakout. That's the trade I will pay attention to, because that trade I'm risking real money. Gold has an upward trend. If the news is negative, it could push gold to the upside. If gold acted the way it used to act years ago or 18 months ago, as we all know, gold very often does not follow the expected direction we think it should follow anymore based on a news result. It doesn't. Gold used to very reliably go up on negative news, and it would very reliably go down on positive news, sort of like the bonds would do. That has changed. Doesn't always work that way. Reports, indexes seem to have a mind of their own these days. So 5 seconds before the burst or the drop, we will get orders on the chart on the trap trade. I'm pretty much going to ignore the right side because I am trading real money on the left, and if I have to manage my live trade, that's the one I kind of want to, need to pay attention to, obviously. So we got 15 seconds. Again, I think the news is going to be positive. Now, I have in my head, in my earphone, someone telling me the news. That's the trap trade setup. Trying to be patient here. So I moved my chart by accident. Real life grabbed 7 ticks. Okay, not a good burst. Not a good burst. What happened was, I'm going to go over it in the video. Barely grabbed my first target. Price reversed as I was trying to move my stop. And sometimes it happens. I failed to move my stop. And then price reversed. I waited a second or two to see if price would go back to following through with the news result. It didn't. So I exited the trade also because I had moved my chart all the way to the right and had difficulty seeing the exact price action. Now you can see it on the right. So let's manage this trap trade, okay? Because it may be that the trap trade is still better for this report. What has happened is both tiers filled and the price did reverse. Okay, but now it's going back to the upside rather slowly. If you look at the news result was somewhat positive. Okay, I think gold is just trading from its trend. rather than necessarily this particular news report. The reason I say that is the news report was not that positive. In other words, it was almost as expected. It was almost as expected. It should drive gold down a little bit, but it's having trouble doing that, possibly because the trend on gold is so positive. Okay, there's over a $10 upward trend on gold. Now the trap trade, so what happened, to explain it again, our breakout trade, it popped, it hit my first target, and I was able to exit the trade with a profit of $70, okay? I'm not going to complain about that, especially because I moved my chart. I couldn't really quite see everything that was going on properly, although I did have gold on the right side, so it's never a reason to panic. Even though it's micro gold, it moves very similarly. Right now, what we've got going on, though, is the trap trade still appears. I've tested the trap trade very, very much on this report. And I was hoping the breakout would explode and go through all our targets right away like it did last month. But it's still struggling as a breakout, this report. Now, if you analyze the news result, you did not get a gigantic difference between what was expected in the news and what the result was. That means you may not get a gigantic move. Now, I'm going to get stopped on this trap trade, but I don't want to take a loss at this point because it has spent enough time chopping around and not really finding a great negative direction. If it wants to change direction and push down, I'll make some money on the test trade. If it wants to keep moving up, I've protected a tiny profit on that test trade, which I would do if I were trading it with real money. So real money, you would have made about $30 to $60. However, let's watch the video, there was an opportunity to have a decent profit on that trap trade. And I'll explain what I mean. Let's watch the video. All right, and we can explain exactly what happened. So just to recap, live trade, we made 7 ticks on gold, $70. In the test trade, trading micro gold, a $3 profit, which is 10 times less than what it would have been with full size gold. Now, I'm just curious, any of our members trade live with me? Anybody out there trade live with me? Or did everybody just watch this morning? All right, so let me render the video. It takes about 10 seconds. And you can watch, we can watch what happened. So even you like trading the NQ. Trading the NQ at 10 o'clock for me is not something I do. Even though you can make money doing it, it's not always moving because of the news. You have to understand that very often the NQ is moving because the NQ moves at 10 o'clock, whether there's news or not. That's the reality of the NQ. Now, you can also tell by looking at its behavior if it was potentially a news move. And when I look at a chart that looks the way the NQ chart looks, to me, it's not so much a news move as a continuation of a trend, okay? So you could also trade the NQ on a trend continuation, and for whatever reason, I think the NQ market is negative and doesn't have any relationship to this particular news result. Manufacturing is a little bit up. Would that drive the NQ down, 20 points? Not sure that it would, to be honest. Not really sure that it would. The NQ does have good liquidity this time of day, probably better than gold. So let's look at what we traded. Sometimes we get a big move, sometimes we don't. So here's a replay of what we just did exactly. So let's watch it. So we set up both of our trades. We had a trap trade set up on the right. And then we had a breakout. So here we're watching the breakout. The price exploded to the upside, hits my first target, okay? And I'm up $70 realized. In other words, my first target was 7 ticks. The burst at the exact time of the news hit my target and gave me that $70 profit. Then what happened is I was trying to move my stop by accident. I slid my chart over, okay? That's why the price disappeared. You can watch the price here on the right. It pretty much just reversed to the downside. I got my chart back to normal, and I just closed out the trade when price got approximately break even, because it looked to me like there was the potential of losing all the profit on a reversal. Now, so that's the breakout trade. It hit our first target, and then it reversed, and I took myself out of the trade. Now, if you look at the trap trade, 5 seconds before the report is released, the trap trade puts orders on the chart. And the way that a trap trade works, that orange arrow is the current price. The orders are the tiers, and we had 2 of them. One was 8 ticks above current price, 8 ticks below, and one was 18 ticks above current price, 18 ticks below. They serve as your entries. And that's how the trap trade works. When you get pulled in, the idea is we're expecting a change in direction, and then our targets will be the opposite side orders. So what happened very quickly when the news came out, it popped and hit both the tiers on the trap trade, putting us in short because the price went up and we sold on that move. Price went up and we sold, okay? Then it did actually, it chopped quite a bit of chopping. It went from profit to loss. It had a good moment where it went down, where it would have been a pretty strong trap trade because the micro gold got as high as, I think if I remember correctly, yeah, it was $14 profit, 16. That's like a $200 regular size gold profit. So you could have exited the trap using the trap trade as a pretty profitable setup. So we marked that in our journal up to $30 profit on micro gold. And you would have taken, if I was watching it and letting it play out because it didn't hit any of the targets, but using full size gold, that would have been a pretty strong profit on the trap trade. So there is good possibility, good reason, very possibly for using a trap trade on gold. Now, because one of our members had a very good trade using the NQ, so even what type of setup did you use on the NQ? Did you use a bracket setup? Did you trade it manually? I'm just curious how you traded it. So in other words, you can, let's say you noticed that there was a fantastic trade on a different index. It's very easy. It's very easy with NinjaTrader to do a test of that index and find out if you would have had a valid setup of the index. In other words, we're testing all the time. constantly to try and figure out if there's a setup that works better than the setup we're using. Okay. So even, I don't know if you're listening or I'm just curious what type of setup you used on the NQ. I mean, I know what I would do. So if I wanted to test the NQ, for argument's sake, right? I wanted to do a quick test of the NQ at 10 o'clock, right? At 10 o'clock, I'm just looking at the trade candle. So the trade candle looks like it was a very solid move to the downside on the NQ. So the first thing you want to do if you want to run a test, you have to download the data. You have to download the market data so you can run a test. So I'm clicking market replay, I'm clicking load, get market replay data. Today is 11/1. So you have to set your date to 11/1 and then put the NQ contract as 12/21 and download it. Okay, now I can run a test of the NQ by disconnecting my connection, connecting playback, and watch how fast it is to do a test of the NQ. If you just put the date in, 11/1 on both boxes here, 11/1 and 11/1. Right click in this blank space. We're going to put the time of the trade with a couple of seconds early. So in other words, it was a 10 o'clock trade. So I'm going to put the time in at 9:59:50. Okay, 9:59:50. That's when I'm going to start trying to replay my test trade. So then all I have to do is enter a strategy. Just put a trade in. We're making believe right now that it's not 10 o'clock yet. It's 9:59 and we have 9 seconds until the news comes out. So I'm going to put in an NQ setup to see if it works. I would use a bracket of 12 on the NQ, and I would look for targets of 7 and possibly 18 or so. I'd use a stop of 20. You need at least a 20 tick stop on the NQ at 10 o'clock. And, if you want to make money on the NQ, you want to trade more than 2 contracts. But for a test, we're just looking to test and see, did the NQ work on this report? And I would look to enter. My first test would be 9:59:59, 1 second before the news comes out. You could also try 10 o'clock, but normally when I test the NQ, I do test 1 second before the news. So that's my NQ test. I can apply it, okay it, enable the trade, and now our replay is just making believe that the news and the result is happening all over again. But we're testing it with the NQ, and you can see the price is moving on the NQ, but you're looking at this clock here, and it just bursts right through for the NQ and works beautifully. And it clearly does look like it was a good, solid news trade for the NQ. So for next month, what I would do within the next 30 days, I'll go back and run some NQ tests, right? I'll run some NQ tests. Now, I don't know if I have the NQ data. So that was the NQ using today, okay? I'm going to do it one more time. I'll show you the trade one more time. So you put in the entry time a little bit before the news actually came out, 9:59:54, for instance. We only need 6 seconds. Time reverses, okay? Time is now reversed. Press play. and I'm using a 12 tick bracket on the NQ, targets of 715, and it shoots right through them, okay? It pulls back, and then it shoots down further, all right? So it looks fine, like our stop would have been perfectly safe. Now, the other thing I'm looking for, what happened last month? Now, I'm not sure I have the NQ data loaded. I'll do a quick check. Doesn't take much to check, but this is the procedure you would go through if you say to yourself, wow, the NQ looked really good this month on this report. How does it look last month? Excuse me. How did it look last month? Did it look tradable? Let's find out. So I'll put the time in of 9:50, 9:50, but our date is different, okay? If I've downloaded the data, it'll be there for October 1st. And it looks like it is, okay, because you can see the time is correct at the bottom of the chart. So we're going to press play again. You can see the time is moving, the NQ is moving, so our data is there. Now the brackets were small, so I'm going to run it one more time. I saw that the brackets were small. Let's run it one more time. Go to 9:59, 54. I was also getting rid of my cursor, so let's look at it one more time. Okay, so press play again. Pressing play again. We have 6 seconds before the news comes out. You could see the NQ somewhat volatile. Now I want to see that again. It's very fast, very fast. Let's look one more time. You had a lot of volatility before the report also. So I'm going to put my time in a little bit earlier. I want about 15 seconds before. In other words, I'm going to look at a little bit longer period of time. That previous 1 minute candle was very volatile on the NQ. It could have scared you from trading the NQ on that report that day. Now you could see that that was not an easy trade, because it looks to me that it went up first and then went down. That was not necessarily a winning trade that month. That was very whippy. It's not guaranteed that you would have got filled. So that would tell me there's no guarantee that the NQ is working perfectly on this report. 1 month looks good today. You go back, the report looks somewhat difficult. Now, do I have September data? It was also 9/1. Let's try one more since we're here. Doesn't take very long. Now, one thing that's different about our September data is our instrument is different. In September, you were trading the September contract, not December. So you have to remember, if you're testing, to change your chart. In other words, we were on NQ 1221. We should be NQ 921. Okay. And I check my time, make sure it's working. Sometimes Ninja resets it. So I have to reset my time, just put it in 9:59, 54, 6 seconds before the news came out 3 months ago. That's the beauty of testing. I can look at 3 months ago so that I know what to do. I want to know how to trade this report. Now, sometimes you get strange things that happen with replay. There's not much I can do about it except reboot and redo it over. But so I didn't want to, my plan wasn't to spend this period doing replay. It was really, we looked at our gold report. Gold worked this morning for a small profit. One of our members had a profit on NQ. So we'll take that under advisement, look at the NQ. possibly for this report. It's not a guarantee that it's the instrument that I would want to trade, just so you know, okay? But gold worked, and we'll be back here in the room. Let's check when our next event is going to be. Hey, Kershid, are you there? Kershid, if you're there, freetraderoom.com. So our next event will be tomorrow for the API report. It was a winner last week. It's a family money trade tomorrow at 4 p.m. Wednesday is a very, very busy day. ADP, ISM services, FOMC statement, very, very important reports. 3 very important reports. And also oils trading as well on Wednesday. So tomorrow we'll be here for the crude report. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Anybody want to ask me anything? Give me 1 second to just get rid of this video. So that was NQ on ISM manufacturing. And let's reconnect our live charts, see where the markets have gone. Put my gold back on. And gold is, so if you look at the time of the news, that's the candle that burst, okay? Then it pulled back. Then gold went down, and now gold has been coming back since the report came out. And just curious what the ES is looking like. The ES at 10 o'clock, it did move down on the news, and then quite a few minutes later, 5 minutes later, it changed direction. George, I've got a VWAP on the chart and 1 moving average, one EMA. Oh, you know what? You know what? My VWAP is not showing right now, I don't think. I use a 8 EMA, a 21, and a 200. An 8, a 21, and a 200. And I don't really pay much attention to them. It's just like an old habit, to be honest. I think that the highs and lows of the days and the pivots, for me, they're more helpful. They're more important to me, the pivots. I look at them. And we do like the VWAP. The VWAP is very interesting. I think let's see which is, let's see. The red is the 200. The blue is the 21. And is this little green? I want to make this thicker. That's my VWAP, is that little green one. And I just want to make it's a little thin. I'd rather the VWAP be nice and thick. There we go. So that's the VWAP is green, just below the 200. And again, I look at them, but moving averages, I really don't pay much attention to them in a news trade, because at the time of the report, I don't even look at any moving averages, any indicators at all, because news causes the index we're trading usually to move in a dramatic fashion. So I don't really care if there's moving averages on the chart. They're good for after the news. If you have a trend before the news and you want to think about a reversal trade. And I also like to use the squeeze to look for reversals as well. All right. Any other questions, folks? Any other questions? So we'll be back here tomorrow. Remember, we trade on a schedule. So we don't spend, we're done today. Our trading is done for the day. We trade specific events. That's how we do it. We don't spend our whole day watching the charts, waiting for something to happen. We know when something's going to happen. And those are the times that we want to be trading in the market. It doesn't mean something's not going to happen. There's plenty of times things will happen, but our style of trading just doesn't support sitting around waiting for it to happen. That's not our style. We trade differently. All right. So I don't see any other questions. So we made a couple of bucks on the ISM. It hit our first target and then it reversed. Definitely going to make a note that the trap trade is a viable method. Last month, the trap trade got stopped out. It was a very strong influence in why I wasn't interested in the trap trade this month. But I've looked at the trap trade on ISM manufacturing for the past 4 months, and it is a valid setup, and I may take it live next month also. However, we've got at least 3 breakouts in a row on ISM manufacturing that have worked. It's not strong enough profit to make it a family money trade, but it's trading better than it has in the past 18 months. So ISM manufacturing is definitely looking better as a breakout trade. We do have videos. Actually, George, for our members, we have a lot of videos on our website. When someone joins, there's like a lot of videos. You know what, George? There's a lot of videos on our YouTube channel. Certainly, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of videos on the breakout trade. There are some live videos also, some educational videos that we put up last week on the way we trade earnings. I'll give you the link to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you can watch a ton of videos. So we do have a ton of videos also there. Here's the link. Okay. And that'll get you to our YouTube channel. And we stream a lot of trade rooms on our YouTube channel as well. Okay. All right, folks. I can't believe we didn't get 1 like on YouTube. Folks, give us a like before you leave. It would be helpful. And I'll see everybody else in the room tomorrow at 4. And then Wednesday we get busier. Okay? So I'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you all later. Take care.